everyone. As the mayor is stuck in traffic, I will be reading the usual announcements as required. And thank you for joining us for our closed session. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with California Government Code 54953E as authorized by resolution of the City Council. Please contact city.clerk@mountainview.gov to obtain a copy of the applicable resolution. All members of the City Council are participating in this meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. Members of the public wishing to observe the meeting live may do so at mountainview.legistar.com or youtube.com/mountainviewgov or on Comcast channel 26. As noted on the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral public comments during the public comment period by visiting mountainview.gov/meeting to enter the Zoom meeting or by phone by dialing 669-900-9128 and entering the webinar ID 843-5126-7142. Any emails received by 4:30 p.m. today were received directly by the City Council. City Attorney Loeb will make a closed session announcement, and then the City Council welcomes public comment on the item listed for closed session.
Good evening. Good evening. This is City Attorney Jennifer Loeb. There's one item on the closed session agenda for this evening. Item 2.1 is a conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9. The name of the case is San Francisco Baykeeper versus the City of Mountain View and the City of Sunnyvale. United States District Court case number 20-CV-00824. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on the closed session item listed on tonight's agenda? If so, please click the raised hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen if you comment. So I, at this point, do not see anyone wishing to comment. So the council will now recess to close session and return to this webinar at 6:30 p.m. for the regular session.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the joint special meeting of the Mountain View City Council and the Shoreline Regional Park Community of November 1st, 2022. I will now read the usual announcement as required. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with California Government Code Section 54953E as authorized by resolution of the City Council. Please contact city.clerk@mountainview.gov to obtain a copy of the applicable resolution. All members of the City Council are participating in this meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. Members of the public wishing to observe the meeting live may do so at mountainview.legistar.com, youtube.com/mountainviewgov, and on Comcast Channel 26. Noted on the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral public comments during the public comment period by visiting mountainview.gov/meeting to enter the Zoom webinar, or by phone by dialing 669-900-9128 and entering webinar ID 843-5126-7142. Any emails received by 4:30 p.m. today were received directly by the City Council. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Clerk will take attendance by roll call.
Abe Koga? Here. Councilmember Kamei? Here. Councilmember Lieber?
Here.
Councilmember Matichek? Here. Councilmember Showalter?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hicks?
Here.
Mayor Ramirez?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to item 3, presentations. Please note these are presentations only. The City Council will not take any action. Public comment will occur after the presentation items. First is 3.1, California Department of Insurance Overview of Programs. And I will need some help elevating our guest to the panel. Thank you very much. We are happy to be joined this evening by Lisa Strange, Northern California Outreach Manager, California Department of Insurance, to share a presentation. Whenever you're ready, Lisa.
Great, thank you so much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, and let's see, City Manager and City Attorney. As you said, my name's Lisa Strange, and I serve as the Northern California Outreach Manager at the Department of Insurance. And tonight, I'm excited to share just an overview of the Department of Insurance, which will include a short update on consumer protection, senior resources, and the California low-cost auto insurance program. Your normal outreach analyst is Mary Beth Bykowski, but she had a conflict tonight, so I get to present to you. We're trying to talk to all city councils by the end of the year. So we've been meeting with everyone to kind of share who we are. So the California Department of Insurance is a state agency that regulates all lines of insurance, which includes homeowners, auto, life, and many more. We also regulate the insurance companies, agents, and brokers that sell insurance. California insurance companies collect $340 billion in annual premiums, which is what you and I pay in insurance every year. The current elected insurance commissioner is Ricardo Lara, and one of the roles and his authority allows him to ensure that insurers are solvent and all consumer complaints are addressed in a reasonable manner, and insurers and licensees play fairly in the marketplace. And so essentially everything we do at the department is to protect consumers from fraud and abuse, sadly, of which there is a lot. And so what we can do for the consumers and the constituents of Mountain View is we really just want to let you know that if you have any kind of issues with your insurance companies, whether or not you're non-renewed on homeowners, whether or not you don't feel like you've been paid fairly if you were involved in an auto accident, any of those types of things, you can call us and file a formal complaint and we can help. On our website, we have educational information about every line of insurance, which includes resources and phone numbers for all insurance companies. We always encourage folks to check our website to make sure your agent or broker is licensed. That's sadly, some of the fraud that we do see, right, is folks pretending to be an agent. You give them a down payment, you think you're insured, you don't learn that you're not until you have an accident and learn you weren't insured. So we do definitely encourage you to check to make sure your agent or broker are licensed. And all of this can be done on our website, which is insurance.ca.gov. And so just wanted to kind of go over a couple programs. The most recent one is the Safer from Wildfire Framework or Safer from Wildfire Initiative. And basically at the beginning of this year, the commissioner went out and spoke to many constituents in California that were affected by wildfires and learned that a lot of the emergency preparedness agencies were all sort of working in silos doing what they do, which would include the governor's office, the legislature, and many other local governments. So we created an initiative where we all came together to create this framework, and the regulations were just approved in October, which will allow consumers who do the work to protect their homes, to mitigate and create some defensible space. It will require insurance companies to incorporate that framework and all that work into the pricing to drive down costs for consumers who do the work on their homes and businesses. And it will also allow you to receive your property's wildfire risk score and the reasons for it. And then third is the right to appeal that risk determination. A lot of times we hear from folks that are in sort of the wildland urban interface that they don't know what their wildfire risk score is. And so these regulations, once implemented by the insurance companies, will provide that number, that risk score to you. And another program I wanted to share is the Senior Gateway, which is seniors.ca.gov. I'm really proud of this. I helped launch this back about 10 years ago, and it's a one-stop shop website for seniors and their caregivers. And it's a partnership between many state agencies and a couple county district attorneys' offices to really just, again, put everything in one place. We know everyone's kind of working on all of this in their area of expertise. So how can we put all this in one place? And on this website, you will find information on topics such as avoiding and reporting abuse and neglect, preventing fraud, healthcare information, and lots of your rights and many other resources. I actually used this website to help my grandpa find somewhere to place my grandmother when it was time, how to find a licensed sort of care home, right? So super helpful. Again, that website is seniors.ca.gov. And then the last thing I wanted to share this evening is a program that is called the California Low Cost Automobile Insurance Program. And this program's been around since 1999. It is a state-sponsored program for income-eligible drivers. It offers liability auto insurance at an affordable rate. So basically, to qualify for this, obviously you have to have a valid driver's license, which also includes an AB 60 driver's license. So even if you're undocumented, doesn't matter. We want you to have insurance to stay legal. The value of your car needs to be under $25,000, and you must be a good driver and be income eligible. So what we kind of tell folks is if you already qualify for any state or county assistance program, like Medi-Cal or CalFresh, you most likely qualify for this program based on income. So just to kind of give an example, in Santa Clara County, if you are a good driver and all other things equal, the base rate is $244 per year. So that's pretty low to keep all of us. It is only liability insurance, but it will keep you legal with the DMV. So wanted to kind of share that tonight too. And the website for that is mylowcostauto.com, or folks can call toll free 866-602-8861. And you'll begin by taking just a 7-question eligibility quiz to see if you're eligible, and then it prompts you the rest of the way to pay your money and become insured within a day or so of starting this process. So I know I kind of spoke at you and said a lot tonight, but really just want to say that we're here to help in any kind of way we can with insurance needs. We have brochures on all of these things I talked about and many more things that we can send to you free of charge. However else we can help, we're happy to do so. I just want to say thank you so much for letting me present tonight.
Thank you, Lisa, for joining us. Does any member of the council have questions? Vice Mayor Hicks.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming. I think that consumer protection is so important. I learned a number of things, and I imagine that it's not only important, but also underappreciated. So I'm so glad you presented, and we know more about what you do, and I just wanted to commend the work that you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Showalter.
Yeah, I'd like to second that and also say that you listed a number of websites that would be useful to many of us. Would it be possible for you to send an email perhaps to our mayor or our clerk that you could share those with us?
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
Great idea. Thank you. Any remaining questions or comments? If not, thank you again, Lisa, for joining us this evening and for sharing this information.
Great. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.
We'll now move on to item 3.2, United Against Hate Week proclamation. We are happy to be joined this evening by Anthony Rodriguez, Senior Advisor to the Mayor of the City of Berkeley, to accept this proclamation. Proclamation reads, whereas the United States is a nation of immigrants whose strength comes from its diversity, and the Constitution of the United States enshrines equality for all individuals, regardless of race, gender, orientation, religion, or political views, and whereas recent past federal policies and rhetoric have generated a toxic environment that encourages the propagation of racist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, and other bigoted views by emboldened hate groups and individuals, and whereas deep divisions within our country are the result of extreme ideology, further strengthening a cycle of mistrust and suspicion fueled by fear, anxiety, and insecurity. Overall, reported hate crimes in the state of California are at their highest level in more than a decade and increased 32.6% from 2020 to 2021. And whereas the city of Mountain View is fully committed to racial equity and justice as it strives to create a welcoming, safe, and inclusive community for all. And whereas education, compassion, and cooperation are key to unlocking understanding and embracing differences between people. And whereas the city of Mountain View seeks to join other communities in the Bay Area, California, and across the country in observing United Against Hate Week as an important step toward bridging divisions and strengthening our communities. Now, therefore, I, Lucas Ramirez, Mayor of the City of Mountain View, along with my colleagues on the City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of November 13 through November 19, 2022, and each and every week beyond as United Against Hate Week. Anthony, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you so much, Mayor Ramirez. On behalf of the co-founders, Jacqueline McCormick and Patrice O'Neill, the organization Not in Our Town, and the organizers of United Against Hate Week Northern California, I'd like to extend our appreciation and gratitude to the City of Mountain View for their commitment to standing up against hate. Beyond the symbolism and action of this proclamation, this act in its totality, taken by the city, demonstrates our region's growing unified support to come together as one to pacify and stop acts of hatred in its various forms from precipitating in our communities. On average, bias-motivated incidences have increased in major US cities by 39%, and in the largest 10 US cities by 54.5%. The bulk of these increases is directed at Asian, Black, and Jewish residents. However, we can do something about it in our local communities by making a change that can be felt in people's lives. Unite Against Hate is a call to action to bring diverse communities together to stop the spread of hate. So I'd like to thank you all for your ongoing support for Unite Against Hate. Now in its 5th year, the week of events spans from the 13th to the 19th, and is as expansive as throughout this Northern California and Southern California regions, and has grown to almost 200 communities and organizations. Working together, we can be stronger than hate. And with that being said, I'd like to extend an invitation for you all to join the City of Berkeley's signature Unite Against Hate Week event during the evening of Wednesday, November 17th. At 6:30 p.m., we'll be welcoming guests to the UC Theater for a screening and discussion of Repairing the World, Stories from the Tree of Life. This 80-minute documentary film will highlight the city of Pittsburgh's inspiring action in the aftermath of the assault of 3 congregations at the City of Life Synagogue. It is a hopeful view of what communities can do together to counter rising hate and racism. Once again, thank you all so much, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you again for joining us to accept the proclamation. Does any member of the council have any remarks? If not, thank you again. Oh, Vice Mayor Hicks, go ahead.
Well, I just think this deserves a remark. It's unfortunate. First, I'm from the city of Berkeley, so thank you for zooming in here. And then this is an unfortunately timely proclamation, and I'm so glad that we've decided to do it.
Thank you. Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the knowledge of what's going on in terms of the happenings around the Bay Area. And could you repeat again the information that individuals can participate in around the Tree of Life event?
Yeah, happy to. On the evening of Wednesday, November 17th, we will be hosting attendees at the UC Theater at 6:30 p.m. for a screening of the documentary Repairing the World, Stories from the Tree of Life. There'll be a discussion to follow with the filmmaker, with other members of the community and other congregant leaders to discuss the ways in which to respond and act in a manner that is meant to stifle and minimize hate. That's not the only activity that we have in Northern California. You can go to unitedagainsthateweek.org, and there you can navigate to events planned, and you'll see a large building list of events that have been organized thus far in Northern California and Southern California, and you can filter for things that are in San Jose, closer to you, or maybe San Francisco, or all the way in the East Bay here in Berkeley. So you can navigate there to find more information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands in the queue, well, thank you again for joining us, and proceed to the next item, 3.3, Lung Cancer Awareness Month Proclamation. And I see now we have been joined this evening by Albert Jeans, our neighbor, to accept this proclamation. The proclamation reads, whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among men and women in the United States and California, accounting for more deaths than colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer combined. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there were 3,635 new lung cancer cases and 2,240 deaths because of lung cancer between 2015 and 2019 in Santa Clara County. And whereas the 5-year survival rate for localized lung cancer is approximately 60%, yet only around 24% of lung cancers are diagnosed at this stage, and screening for lung cancer for high-risk individuals using low-dose computed tomography can lead to the earlier detection of lung cancer and save lives, reducing the mortality by 20% when compared to screening by chest X-ray in the National Lung Screening Trial, and reducing the risk of death at 10 years by 24% in men and 33% in women, as demonstrated by another large randomized trial. And whereas funding for lung cancer research trails far behind funding for research of many other cancers, and additional research is needed in early diagnosis, screening, and treatment for lung cancer, as well as in lung cancer affecting women. And whereas lung cancer health disparities and lung cancer incidence are decreasing twice as fast in men than in women. Each year, more women die from lung cancer than breast cancer, and by 2035, more women will die from lung cancer than men. And whereas African Americans have the highest lung cancer incidence and mortality of all races, and disparities in lung cancer screening, diagnosis, treatment, and mortality are well characterized among African Americans and other racial minorities. And whereas lung cancer in never smokers is the 7th leading cause of cancer-related death and accounts for 17,000 to 26,000 deaths in the U.S. each year. 60% to 70% of never smokers diagnosed with lung cancer are women, and the proportion of lung cancers diagnosed in never smokers is increasing in the United States. And whereas organizations working in Santa Clara County, such as the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative and Women's Lung Cancer Forum, are committed to educating about lung cancer and lung cancer screening and working to increase lung cancer screening rates in the United States of America. Now, therefore, I, Lucas Ramirez, Mayor of the City of Mountain View, along with my colleagues on the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of November as Lung Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Mountain View, and recognize the need for research in lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities, and encourage all citizens to learn about lung cancer and early detection through lung cancer screening. Albert, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Ramirez and council members. Yeah, thanks for rattling off all the statistics. It's quite scary when you read them on the different websites. Yeah, that lung cancer does kill more people than colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer combined. And I was one of those people that thought, I would never get lung cancer. I never smoked. I never hung around people that did smoke. And yet last year, I was diagnosed with stage 1 lung cancer just by chance. In that sense, I was extremely lucky. Not lucky to get lung cancer, but extremely lucky to have found it at such an early stage. And it happened because I've always had high cholesterol, and I didn't want to go on statins. So I asked my doctor, is there some way to just look at my heart to see if my arteries clogged? And he said, yeah, you can do the CT coronary heart score, which is a CT scan of your heart. They can see if you have a plaque in there. So I said, great, I'll go for it, even if insurance doesn't cover it. And it came back, I was perfectly clean, which is another story about cholesterol and all that. But they said, oh, and by the way, we found this little shadow in your lung, which we better take another look at. So I had a follow-up CT scan on that. And then another follow-up 3 months after that to see if it got bigger, which it didn't, but it was still there. And so then I got a biopsy, and it came back positive cancer, and then for surgery, and had, one of my lungs removed, just one lobe, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I mean, if it hadn't been for that incidental finding, I probably would have died from it in 10 years. Because the thing with lung cancer is, by the time you have symptoms, I had absolutely no symptoms, perfectly healthy. By the time you have symptoms, it's usually too late. And that's why the mortality rates are so bad for lung cancer. And in other countries, I know, like in Japan, they actually routinely give people CT, low dose CT scans to screen people for lung cancer. And I'm not sure why that's not done in the US. Even smokers aren't always given screen for lung cancer in this country. So, I would urge people, even if, insurance doesn't cover it, even if your doctor doesn't think it's worthwhile, at least once, maybe after age 50 or 60, and maybe you can combine it again with the cholesterol thing, 2 for 1. Get a scan, and just to make sure there's nothing. Yeah, I mean, they will find lots of other stuff. They did in my lungs too. But just because lung cancer is such a pernicious killer, I think it's worth doing. And I just hope that, people play the lottery and they don't expect to win, but this is a lottery with your life. And even if the chance is only 1 out of 100 or something, I think it's worth trying to find that cancer early when it could still be treated. And, hopefully I won't have any recurrences. The doctor says that everything looks really good. It was less than an inch large when I took it out, and they didn't find any spreading in the surrounding lymph nodes or anything. So things look pretty good in that sense. So thank you again for that proclamation. I think, yeah, there really needs to be a lot more education on lung cancer, and especially that people really, I think, have to take charge of their own healthcare and just, go in for that CT scan. I think it's just to give you just peace of mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Albert. And I know I speak for the council in sharing my gratitude to you for sharing your story with us and reiterating the importance of screening and hopefully for more people, early diagnosis. Does any member of the council have any comments? Vice Mayor Hicks.
Okay, I hate to speak up every time, but since I invited Albert, thank you so much for coming. I come from an era when people didn't like to speak up about having cancer. So I just thank you for sharing that with us and spreading the word.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands in the queue, we'll say thank you for joining us, Albert, and accepting the proclamation. And now we will take public comment for the presentation items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on the presentation items listed on the agenda? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. Let's go ahead and allocate 3 minutes. The first speaker is Tim McKenzie.
Hi all, Tim McKenzie, he, him pronouns. I also wanted to echo thanks for Albert for sharing that information about lung cancer, and also say it's great that you were able to get the CT scan even if insurance wouldn't cover it, but wouldn't it be great if insurance would cover necessary treatment or preventative treatment? And wouldn't it also be great if we didn't have to rely on health insurance separating us from the needed care that we need to get? So thank you so much for sharing that story. And it also points to some changes that would be great to see happen in our area. Thanks a lot for sharing that.
Thank you. The next speaker is Crescenia Sanchez.
Hi, are we able to make comments in general, or does it have to be on the topics that you spoke about?
So this is just for the presentation items. Later in the agenda, we'll take public comment on non-agenda items.
Okay. I just wanted to say in regards to the proclamation that you did, this is really important for the young people that we work with. So I'm very grateful and thankful that we're bringing awareness. There's a big thing going on with the vape pens that we've noticed an increase in our young people. And, you know, they have all these crazy flavoring and it looks like candy. So I think it's very important that we're bringing this awareness to the young people. So thank you so much for sharing this information with us.
Very much. Seeing no other members of the public wishing to speak, we will proceed now to item 4, consent calendar. These items will be approved by one motion unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. Would any member of the council like to pull an item? Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. I'd like to pull item 4.1, please.
4.1. Thank you very much. We'll take that separately and take public comment on 4.1 separately as well. Councilmember Showalter.
Well, I was going to pull 4.1, but Councilmember Matichak beat me to it, so that's great. But I wanted to make a comment on a few of the other items. You know, these consent calendar items always have a tremendous amount of work behind them, and I think sometimes they need a little extra. We need a little extra communication about the great things the staff is doing and accomplishing them. And 2 of these in particular, I think, fall into that category. One is 4.3, the Sailing Lake Road improvements. This item that's coming to us is just basically to accept that this contract is finished. But the fact that this contract is finished was not a simple thing. It turned out that this road was a dam, and it was officially a dam under California law, which means that it was subject to the regulation of the California Department of Safety of Dams. They are very, very careful about what they permit, and they look over everything with a fine-tooth comb, which they should. I mean, it's for the safety of all of us. But it was sort of surprising because this dam is just barely over the height that makes it an official dam from a seismic point of view. So I just wanted to commend the staff for rising to the occasion and meeting all the necessary requirements. and finishing that project. And I know that some things came up, such as some extra buried utility lines that had to be dealt with, and that was also made it challenging. So it's very important. And then the other thing I think that's so interesting about this project, this is one of the projects in our plan to protect our community against sea level rise. And it's very important because this dam functions as a road, and all of the vehicles, the many trucks and other heavy vehicles that will be going out to help restore the marshes and some of the other jobs that need to be done, levee improvements that need to be done, will have to go over this road, and it needed to be fortified. So this really represents real important progress on Mountain View's path to protect us all from sea level rise. And from that point of view, it's exciting that we're doing that we're not just planning for it. I mean, we're actually doing it. So kudos to the staff. And then the other one I wanted to talk about was the Ringsdorf grade separation. That is another very challenging engineering project. And right now we're working on some agreements to make sure that this gets done properly and allows us to get the money we need and all that sort of thing. But I just want to thank the staff for all the effort involved in this. And I look forward to following every step that there is to get to the day when we can cut the ribbon and have everybody use just a much safer crossing for bikes, people, cars, and trains. Thanks.
Thank you. And you're right. The consent calendar, I think, obscures a tremendous amount of work that's being done. So I appreciate you highlighting the work that the staff have done. Seeing no other members of the council in the queue, we will turn to public comment for the balance of the consent calendar. That's everything except for item 4.1. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. Let's go ahead and allocate 2 minutes. The first speaker is Alex Brown.
Oh, it's so rare that I'm first. Hey, everybody. Just wanted to call out the La Avenida project. As a neighbor of the project, I'm very excited to see more housing up in North Bayshore. And, funding is one of the most important things when getting off the ground. I can't wait to have more neighbors up here. And I think this is a very noble project, affordable housing. Thanks. Oh, grade separation is cool too. I also want safer transit options.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bruce England.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to speak on 4.5, the grade separation for Ringsdorf. Just a couple of points on that. I don't see any discussion of no right turns on red for Ringsdorf and Central. I'm wondering if it's too early in the process still, but I would hate to wait for the design phases just to be told we're too late bringing it up. So the timing is going to be important on that from a community perspective. And on page 7, at the end of the paragraph before the conclusion section, I'm wondering if does improve access imply more traffic going in and out of North Bayshore as a result, and what does that mean? I know you can't answer the questions necessarily, but I'm bringing them up anyway. Thanks.
Thank you. I see no other members of the public in the queue. We will return to the council for deliberation and action, and I will note that a motion to approve the consent calendar should also include reading the title of the resolutions attached to items, in this case 4.2 and 4.4. Councilmember Abikoga.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't see any other hands, so I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. That includes item 4.2, adopt resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View amending resolution number 18546 as amended by resolution numbers 18577 and 18631, temporarily suspending certain requirements for sidewalk cafes pursuant to Mountain View City Code sections 36.42 at C. and waiving sidewalk cafe fees payable May 1st, 2020 through April 30, 2024, and authorizing outdoor dining in the pedestrian malls to facilitate a consistent outdoor dining program in the downtown area, to be read in title only, further reading waived, And item 4.4, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View approving the issuance of revenue bonds by the California Municipal Finance Authority in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $55 million, I believe, I'm right, to finance and refinance a 100-unit multifamily housing facility for the benefit of Avenida Armand LP, a California limited partnership or another entity created by Avenida LLC or an affiliate, and certain other matters relating thereto to be read in title only, for their reading waived. And just to clarify, this is for the balance of the consent calendar except for item 4.1. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Commit.
I'll second.
Thank you. Seeing no hands up for questions or comments, I'll ask the city clerk to start the roll call vote.
Councilmember Abe-Coca?
Aye.
Councilmember Kamei?
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber?
Aye.
Councilmember Matichak?
Yes.
Councilmember Showalter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hicks?
Yes.
Mayor Ramirez?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you. So we'll now return to item 4.1. Councilmember Matichak, would you like to start us off?
Thank you. So I pulled item 4.1 because I thought we should discuss this and talk about when the council would return to in-person meetings. As I think everyone knows, the governor is scheduled to end the state of emergency at the end of February, and I'm guessing the city will follow shortly thereafter. And we have been virtual for a very, very long time. And I think it's time we come back in person. And it's my understanding that what we will do is, while the council will be in person, the public will have the opportunity to either be in person or be virtual. So a hybrid meeting, which I think is great because some members of the public, it's just so much easier for them to participate from someplace other than the council chambers. And I think this will increase our participation by the public, which is always a good thing. So I would propose that we set a date of January 10th, which is our first meeting in January. It's a ceremonial meeting, but set that as the date we return to the council being in person in the chambers.
Thank you. Any questions? I do need to go and take public comment. So let's do questions and then public comment and then deliberation and action. I am not seeing any questions, so let's go to the public and allocate 2 minutes. Does any member of the public have any comments on item 4.1? Tim McKenzie is the first speaker.
Hi, thank you very much for pulling this, Councilmember Matichak. I agree totally with everything you just said. It's would be great to be able to get in person and meet in the meet world again. That would be lovely. But I don't think we can understate or underestimate the accessibility improvement of being able to comment virtually. And I think it really helps improve engagement. And I'm sure there will be bumps on the road figuring out what hybrid looks like, but I think that it's something that we can figure out as a city. And I wholeheartedly endorse the idea of getting back in person, but also maintaining this ability to have a virtual format. So thank you very much for pulling this and suggesting that.
Thank you. Seeing no other members of the public, we'll return to council for deliberation and action, and I'll note that the motion should include reading the resolution attached to item 4.1. Councilmember Matichak.
I'm happy to make a motion if you're ready.
I am ready.
So I'll move that we adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View authorizing and continuing virtual meetings of City Council, committee, boards, and commissions pursuant to AB 361 and making required findings to be read in title only, further reading waived, and set January 10th, 2023 as the date the council will be in person at City Council meetings, and the public can be in person or virtual. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hicks.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? If not, then let's take the vote.
Councilmember Matachek,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hicks,
Yes.
Councilmember Abikuka,
Aye.
Councilmember Kamei,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
Aye.
Councilmember Showalter,
Yes.
Mayor Ramirez.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you very much. We'll now move on to oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the council from acting on non-agenda items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. First speaker is Crescencia Sanchez.
Thank you, Mayor Ramirez. My name is Crescencia Sanchez, and I am with Bill Wilson Center, a local nonprofit in Santa Clara County that is working to end youth and family homelessness. I am here this evening to let the community know that November is a Runaway and Homeless Youth Prevention Month. This is a nationwide campaign that's spearheaded each November to increase awareness about the homeless youth and young adults in our community. This is especially critical in Santa Clara County, despite being the technology hub of our county. Now has the 4th highest population of homeless individuals in the entire nation. And California has the highest rate of unaccompanied homeless youth. Did you know that more than 2,500 homeless students enrolled in K-12 are in this county? I'm not sure if everybody's aware of that. It does take a long time to house a person, especially young people and young parents. It's also very difficult to help them transition into permanent housing if they're lacking adequate employment and skills for independent living. We are supporting the young people in this community so they don't become homeless adults in the community. The Wilson Center has been serving homeless youth and young parents in the community here in Santa Clara County for the past 45 years. And we are working very closely with Mountain View and partnering with local high school to assist families who are homeless or are on the verge of becoming homeless, and to obtain and maintain permanent housing. By helping families find stability, our youth and our students can achieve higher academic success. If anyone in the council or anyone in our community would like to learn more about the services that Bill Wilson Center offers, you could visit our website at www.billwilsoncenter.org, or you could join us in a march that we'll be having on November 10th in downtown San Jose, and we'll be walking to our drop-in center to bring awareness on this issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Crescencia. Seeing no other members of the public wishing to speak, we will move on to our public hearing. Item 6.1, ordinances amending chapters 8, 14, and 24 of the City Code to adopt the 2022 California and 2021 International Codes, incorporating by reference other uniform codes and REACH codes. Assistant City Manager and Community Development RT Shrivastava and Chief Sustainability and Resiliency Officer Danielle Lee will present the item. Whenever you're ready.
Dear council members, I am going to present this item, and Danielle Lee will join me. If you could just indulge me for a moment. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. So tonight I will present our triennial building code and fire code update. Every 3 years, the state adopts new building standards. Elements include building, fire, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, and other items as noted on the slide. The city typically receives them at the end of July, and staff in the building fire departments, as well as other agencies and sustainability work on the local amendments. Typically, our amendments are adopted to our amendments include International Fire and Property Maintenance Code, as well as uniform abatement of dangerous buildings. In addition to these amendments, jurisdictions are also authorized to make other local amendments to achieve local climatic, environmental, or other conditions that are necessary to address the health and safety of residents. This year, the city worked on a 3-month intense process along with the divisions and departments I mentioned, Sustainability Division and outside agencies, including SVCE, or Silicon Valley Clean Energy, to ensure that local amendments and REACH codes were incorporated. I will now turn over the presentation to Danielle Lee, who will go over our coordination with SVCE on the model REACH codes.
Thank you, RT. Good evening, Mayor, council members, city manager, and city attorney. Although the REACH code adoption process is an inherently detailed and technical one, I wanted to start my remarks by sharing some of the broader context of the REACH codes that are before your council this evening. REACH codes are a critical strategy to achieving Mountain View's sustainability goals. Our sustainability action plan, GHG reduction targets, and adopted carbon neutrality goal all rely on REACH codes. As PG&E, the state, and the nation transition away from fossil fuels, such as natural gas and gasoline, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, REACH codes help communities upgrade to efficient, pollution-free buildings and transportation. As RT mentioned, the development of the proposed REACH codes was a collaborative effort. There were both internal partnerships across departments, as well as significant support from Silicon Valley Clean Energy and other Bay Area CCEs who offered technical support and outreach assistance. SVCE staff is also in attendance this evening. Next slide.
Sorry.
Thanks, RT. Across the state, communities are turning to REACH codes to achieve their sustainability goals. More than 50 jurisdictions in California have adopted electrification REACH codes. In SVCE territory, which is what this slide is depicting, 15 of the 16 jurisdictions have adopted a REACH code in 2019 for new construction. And right now, as Mountain View is doing, jurisdictions are reviewing, enhancing, and readopting their REACH codes to make sure that they stay effective through 2026. As you can see from this chart, one size does not fit all, and the codes have varied in their requirements for buildings and electric vehicles. There is, however, an increasing recognition that REACH codes are an important tool for jurisdictions to utilize in rising to meet the climate challenge that we all face. I'm pleased to point out that Mountain View has been at the forefront of this effort and many other sustainability efforts. And we adopted some of the most ambitious REACH codes in 2019 and are again poised to adopt all of the recommendations from SVCE in the 2022 cycle. Not included on this slide, but just to share a little bit of additional information, both Menlo Park and San Jose are considering all electric REACH codes as well this cycle, very similar to what Mountain View is considering. And now I'd like to turn the presentation back to Artie, who will go over the rest of the slides.
Thank you, Danielle. For the 2022 REACH codes, the city will make amendments to Chapter 8 of the Building Code. Essentially, we plan to re-adopt building and electrification requirements that were part of the 2019 code update because the state doesn't go quite that far. And in addition, you will note that we will be updating our photovoltaic and EV infrastructure requirements consistent with state requirements and the recommendations of SVCE. You will note that this year, there are requirements for existing buildings to add capacity for EV charging when certain changes are made, such as adding parking or electrical panel upgrades. The next few charts compare the key revisions for various occupancy types. This chart is meant for single family, duplex, and townhomes, and the proposed recommendations for the city are in the right-hand column, outlined in the blue dotted line. As noted in the staff report, Mountain View's proposed amendments are generally consistent with SVCE. However, where they are different, it is because our current 2019 code has a more stringent requirement and staff is proposing to retain it, or the state code has a more stringent requirement than SVCE, and staff is making our code consistent. And finally, to add clarity of intent consistent with the 2019 codes, and you will see that in the revisions to the PV wiring and battery storage requirements. I'm going to quickly go through the slides related to, some reason my slide deck is not moving, for multifamily buildings. And I'm happy to address any questions you might have. For mixed use buildings and hotel and motel buildings. And then finally for new commercial and existing commercial buildings. In addition to the revisions noted in Chapter 8 of the Building Code, there are revisions proposed to Chapter 14 and Chapter 24. Most of the revisions are related to updating definitions and code references and to remove redundant information that's already addressed in the International Code. The city held a virtual community meeting on October 24th to provide the community with information about the proposed amendments. Notices were sent to developers and interested community members. Approximately 30 people attended the meeting. As can be noted on the slide, community feedback was very supportive of the amendments. In addition, SVCE responded to questions about rebates and other programs to help with building electrification. And there were suggestions that the city also consider requirements for existing buildings. In summary, we have 3 recommendations for you tonight. The first one is introducing an ordinance amending Chapter 8, which is the Building Code. The second is an ordinance amending Chapter 14, the Fire Code. And the third is an ordinance amending Chapter 24, which is the Hazardous Materials Code, and to set a second reading for December 13th. Next steps are to return for a second reading on the date mentioned here, just December 13th. And after adoption, staff will work with a consultant to file an application with the California Energy Commission, which is required because of our REACH code amendments. This concludes our staff recommendation. And we also have staff in the building and fire divisions, our consultant, and a staff person from SVCE in the audience if the council has any questions. I will stop sharing my slides and take questions.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions? Vice Mayor Hayes.
So I'm very excited and inspired by this, but I do have one question that is, it's not my own question, it's one that we got from a member of the public who's a landscaper, and I'm curious if anyone can answer this question. She says, although new homes aren't allowed to have gas lines to fire pits, etc., frequently as part of landscape renovations in existing homes, people install fire pits or fireplaces in the yard or run new natural gas lines to those appliances, and she names various other things that people do in their yards that are not necessarily part of a building remodel. And so she's wondering, she thinks they're not prohibited unless she didn't read it thoroughly enough. And so the question is, are those prohibited? Is that something that could happen now or in the future, some future REACH code or code?
Council member, if you can give me a couple of minutes, I will just check with staff to make sure I have the right response.
Sure. Maybe there are other questions.
Okay, we do have a response. At this point, we are not including existing construction, which this would be defined as, in building electrification requirements. But we actually have a definition of remodels, and if they meet new construction, we would then extend those building electrification requirements to that. So we're not requiring it for the case that you mentioned, Vice Mayor.
I see, unless it's somehow rolled into your definition of, I don't remember the exact terms, but a more extensive remodel.
Right, where 50% or more of the three elements of structure are changed or added to in some form.
So if it's a part of that, yeah, I guess she's seeing it on a regular basis and was hoping there would be some way to address that, but I can maybe.
Yeah, we are going to be looking at with SVCE, you know, as they develop some of these requirements for existing buildings. They do intense outreach, meet with developers. They have a lot of information, and we generally like to work with them because then we just need to do local outreach and you know, have the comfort that they've addressed all the other issues. Also, the 50% is actually something that we commonly use where buildings are required to meet the updated code. And so we wanted to apply that consistently.
Okay, well, I think it's something, thank you so much for that answer. And I think it's something to keep, I think she raises a good point and it's something to keep our eyes on. I know personally, it's good to educate people and let them know that they may be investing in something that's going to be phased out. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Showalter.
Yeah, I was hoping that you could just go over what PV installation pre-wired to accommodate an all-electric building means in a little more detail, because I think there's a lot included in that phrase, and I just like to understand it better.
Sure, Council Member. In the past, we had, when we adopted the 2019 code, we had adopted a requirement of 50% of the roof being covered in solar panels. And we found that was very, very hard for people to meet. And we were constantly having to find alternative means and methods or exceptions to the code. So essentially what we changed this to is we looked at the SVCE recommendation, which was very generic. And it basically said PV wiring and battery installation. And we wanted to make sure that if there was pre-wiring and if there was battery installation, it was done in such a manner that in the future, solar panels and the energy from those panels could accommodate 100% of the building's energy. So we're only requiring pre-wiring and battery storage to accommodate it. At this point, we're not requiring that the solar panels meet 100% of the building's energy. And that is not recommended by the SVCE. Does that help?
Yeah, and then what about the panel? What about the electrical panel that's put in? That there's some sizing related to that too. That
yes, and yeah, again, if a building is new or it meets the definition of new construction, the panel will have to be upgraded in order to address this requirement as well. And so we do a comprehensive review of all the requirements and make sure that the panels are upgraded accordingly.
So the panel would have to be big enough to meet all the electrical needs that were expected to be there someday, even if they're not there at the beginning. And that would, and we generally include in that PV, battery storage, an EV charger, as well as all the other things that people have been using for many years. Is that, do I have that generally
I believe
correct?
that is the case. You know, there may be some revisions that might happen because they're now switching to solar. So I think it will be a case-by-case scenario. But yes, in general, we want to make sure that every building that's new or considered new construction is able to have wiring and battery installation to meet 100% of its future need through solar panels.
Thank you.
you very much. Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. So as Ms. Lee said, this is definitely a detailed topic, and I apologize because my questions are really detailed. And I wish I had sent in more of these ahead of time, but I spent more time on this today, got more public input, made me think of other questions, did research on my own, and realized I had even more questions. But I really think it's important to understand this in order to make a decision on what we do. So I apologize again for the detailed nature of the questions I have. First, I sent in a question about what's involved in increasing electrical capacity to a given residential unit. And I wasn't referring to a new residential unit. I was referring to an existing residential unit, but the answer was more about a new unit. So if you have an existing home and you realize you need more capacity, what does that really mean and how do you address it?
Let me check with staff. Again, I just wanted to confirm that existing homes as they're defined in the building code are not required to put in these upgrades. Only new construction is required to have these changes. So if that's what you mean, I'm happy to provide some additional detail on that.
So let's see, on page, I labeled the pages of attachment 4, and this is on page 2 of attachment 4. And maybe I misinterpreted. The last column, the last box, for existing, which is the bottom row, it says required as new construction.
Sorry, council member. I have attachment 4 up. Which kind of construction are we existing single family?
Yes.
Okay. Are you talking about parking additions or electrical panel upgrades must have reserved breaker spaces?
Yeah, so the electrical panel upgrades
for EV part of new construction. Yes. So EVCS level 2 installed and 1 EV level 1 ready are the requirements. But these installations are not actually required. We just need to make sure that the panel is upgraded to be able to accommodate it. Typically, it doesn't put a whole lot of load on the home. And depending on what the panel is able to accommodate, you may need an upgrade. But if it's out of panel space, typically a 200 amp minimum is required.
So
does that help?
When you upgrade a panel, what are you doing?
I might have to bring Nina Bizjak, who is our chief building official, up, who can maybe respond to that.
Good evening, Council. Yes, this is Nina Bizjak, Chief Building Official. So upgrading a panel typically means the current panel has run out of space or circuits. So you'll typically see in a panel size, an empty circuit has no label, has an open space for future improvements. What that means is if you're adding items to your home, such as an EV charger, and you're out of space in your panel, you have 2 options really. You have 1, upgrade the main panel, and we have a local amendment which states the minimum size is a 200 amp. Or the other option is to add a sub panel to the main panel. And then we also have a minimum amperage size of 125. And we did that the last code cycle, 2019, to encourage when you upgrade a panel to have extra space for easy access and installation of the outlet to support the EV or PV on existing structures. So that's how we've helped capture some of the existing structures and improvements, is by regulating a minimum panel size for main panel of 200 amp and some panel of 125. But you know if that answers your question.
Yeah, so do you always have enough power from this being transmitted or distributed by PG&E to that panel? Even as you upgrade the panel?
Thank you for making me a panelist, so I have a face. Appreciate that. Sorry, please repeat the question. It was in transition.
Yep. So when you upgrade a panel and you're adding more and you're filling those spaces or adding a sub panel, is there any role in that PG&E plays in order to provide additional power? Or is it just, it's there already in the infrastructure that they've already laid for your house?
Typically, and in only a few rare circumstances, we say offsite grid did not have the capacity to support. There's only 2 incidences I have seen. So that supports really the SVCE recommendation and confirming with PG&E that they'd be able to deliver the kilowatts needed to support electrification. And I know Danielle has additional information if necessary on that, but that it is often able to be accommodated. There's rare that it is not, the grid is not able to support.
Councilmember Matichak, we had responded to that in the responses to questions that provided a little visual of the process when people apply for additional electrical power. PG&E actually analyzes the requests, the current capacity, and they make sure that there is sufficient capacity.
Right, but that one was labeled for new construction.
Right.
For new customers. I was talking about new customer.
I would imagine the process is typically the same. It's a building permit process, and you have to go through PG&E before you can get your final, make sure that your panel is upgraded.
Okay. There's in the actual code, not in Appendix 4, it talks about, the percent of the home that I think was the 3 criteria that would trigger this. Since we passed the REACH codes in 2019, I feel like I've had a lot of people say, I want to do a kitchen remodel and keep my gas cooking. If somebody just does a complete kitchen remodel, that does not trigger anything, correct? Because that doesn't meet the criteria of the 50% for the 3 items.
Correct, Council Member. Again, it qualifies as existing construction. And so the building electrification requirements do not kick in.
Okay. In Appendix 4, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here. Quite often, there's the letter E that's in parentheses. For example, on page 3, the lower 2 right boxes, it says when new parking facilities are added or electrical systems or lighting of E parking facilities. What is that E for?
Sorry, Council Member, could you provide that reference again?
Yep, on page 2 of attachment 4. I felt like attachment 4 was the key document for this topic.
Right.
The bottom 2 right boxes.
Right.
It's, for example, in the Bay Area Repos, the very last one.
Right. Nina, can you explain? Do you have attachment 4? I'm sorry, I don't have an explanation for it.
So yeah, attachment for existing buildings, footnote.
Page 2 for multifamily buildings.
Yeah, so for existing multifamily, what E is. So this requirement pertains to additional parking that is being added.
So I understand what the what it's talking about. What's E?
E is existing parking. So if you're adding lighting to an existing parking area, so say a surface parking lot, and you're adding electrification of lighting or upgrading the lighting and redoing that system, that's when it would also trigger the 10% installation of EVCS, which is electric vehicle charging stations.
No, so I got that. So the E in parentheses stands for existing?
Yes.
Okay. That was not clear to me. Is this going to be what we will have as like a handout for folks to understand? Or is this just for this meeting? This appendix?
This appendix will become part of a robust educational document that we're going to be jointly producing with the SBCE and the resource page for rebates and local, state, and federal locations of where to obtain information about the program. So it's going to be an overall package of information, and this will be contained within it, and then also whom they can speak to in each agency about the programs themselves.
Okay. So you might want to note what that is then. This is going to be used in other places. Also on that same page, on page 3, and I think the presentation had this slightly different, and maybe this answers my question. The last column, starting with all electric, no gas allowed. It's one big box, and I thought that applied to both new multifamily as well as existing multifamily. But actually, I think on the presentation, it was divided. Is that correct? That actually only part of it applies to the...
Council member, I believe that particular column kind of grew a little bit just to accommodate the text, but it was supposed to only apply for new. But let me check.
That is correct. It's only for new.
So there's nothing for existing.
For existing, it follows the same language of when you have the E. We'll go back to the E, what E stands for existing. You're adding the new parking. It's never been parking before, electrical systems or lighting modifications to existing. So it's the same. So slide 2, 3, 4, and 5 all have the same parking requirement, except for single family is a bit different.
Council member, I could share the slide if you want to take another look at it.
That'd be great. Okay. So where that orange line is, it actually is where it breaks. And only the very bottom applies. Okay. On attachment 4 again, page 3, the existing multifamily buildings, is that independent of how many units there are? So it's all existing?
Yes.
Okay. And also on page 3, let me find my notes here. So I have seen some multifamily buildings that have detached garages. So I guess I was wondering, is it the fact that a garage is attached or the fact that it's a garage that triggers some of the requirements?
Do you mean the 50% construction or when parking facilities are added? It doesn't matter if it's attached or detached when parking facilities are added for existing buildings.
Okay.
If it's a detached garage or attached garage, these requirements would apply.
So when I say a carport is converted to a garage, would that trigger this?
It does say altered and the work requires a building permit. Yes.
That requires a building permit? Okay. So in general, not specific to any of these, was a financial analysis done to understand the impact on these proposed ordinances?
Staff didn't do a local one, but I believe there was one done by SVCE and the other organizations.
And gosh, that would have been nice to have. Like I'm trying to understand, and I'm not sure if this can be answered here. What is the impact on, say, an individual resident or a multifamily complex of things like, well, those would probably be two different examples. Say a multifamily complex that decides to change the lighting in their parking lot. And now they're required to put in the EV infrastructure. Do we have any idea the cost of that, or a percent of the project, or?
Not at this time, but we can probably do a little bit of research and look for not just the financial analysis, but also the items you asked for. I would also like to mention these are state requirements and requirements by BACMed, actually. So it's not, these are not local amendments that for existing buildings.
Wow. So if you're in a complex that has an HOA and you change something in the parking lot, either the electrical or the lighting, it's a state or BACMed requirement to add the EV infrastructure?
I understand that's the case. And 10% of the total number of parking spaces added or altered are required to be EV. So, yes.
Okay. Okay, I guess that surprises me. I hope somebody did the financial analysis and felt comfortable that these were not unreasonable costs. I'd love to see that if that's available.
We can go and do the research, and I can get more information about when the BACMed goes into effect. We know that about 3 months ago, they adopted some new regulations related to this.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Abikoga.
Thank you, Mayor. If it's okay to make comment as a response to Councilmember Matichek's questions.
This is your BACMed hat, right?
Yes,
okay.
As well as clean energy and, and other bodies. But I just wanted to share, at least with the Air District. I can't remember what we're doing with EVs, but we are actually looking at regulations around requiring like the replacement of water heaters and other home appliances because there's been findings that there are other emissions that affect public health from these gas appliances. And so we are looking at regulations to require the replacements to be electric and not gas for other emissions reasons. So there are definitely standards at the air district that we are looking at implementing. And then in terms of cost, you know, that's been something that I've been very concerned about too, especially with existing buildings, in a city like ours that has rent control, I've been bringing up the issue of the cost prohibitiveness of some of these, requirements. And so with clean energy, we've had a lot of discussion and looking at programs. Staff here, the clean energy staff, I think, is here, but ways to provide credits or subsidies to help, and even actually financing programs to help with individuals being able to actually afford to make these upgrades. So, definitely aware of the challenges of cost on some of these requirements. And so we're trying to find ways to help with alleviating some of those. Thanks.
Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, very good to hear this discussion. And I had a question. When staff comes back, could we learn a little bit more about if parking is altered to cure a soft story problem? Would that trigger these requirements? I see staff shaking their head no.
No, that's deemed a structural necessity and would not trigger the EV upgrade requirement.
Okay, thank you so much for that information.
Thank you. Are there any remaining questions? Councilmember Matichak.
So sorry, maybe I do have another question, and that's if BachMed and other organizations have already, and the state have said, these are already state laws. What in what we're looking at tonight is something that we have a say on, or is it all just codifying what has already been done by the state and other organizations?
I believe the model changes recommended by SVCE are voluntary. We added the existing buildings, and we can get more data information on specifically what the state requirement is regarding existing buildings. But those are optional. Our building electrification requirements are optional. But typically we do have to adopt the state codes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands in the queue, we will turn to the public. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. Let's go ahead and allocate 2 minutes. The first speaker is Stephen Goldstein.
I just unmuted. My name is Stephen, and I've lived here since 2007. And I recently had a major problem with regards to city inspections. And that is because it's turning out that I've discovered that the city inspector has not been in compliance with the California Building Code regarding what information has to be included in an inspection. And along with that, he recently issued a building permit for work that was already done. And at the same time, there's another problem, and that is that there's current technologies usable to determine whether construction materials that are being used for any work is in fact defective before it is installed. And so far, from what I'm understanding at this point, this is not being done. I'm personally in a situation where work was done on my building, and the materials used have shown defects in them in less than a year. And so I'm saying at this point in time, it looks like the idea of giving a city inspector the authority to render interpretations of the code is a violation of the building code itself. Because what you're really in effect saying is that he is the judge and jury regarding the building code, when in fact the state building code and its regulations are actually superior to him. So at this point in time, I'm thinking that this is a weird way of trying to give a city employee an authority that they don't have, because the state building code and the state laws are very clear. And if the city is deciding to not be in compliance with them, then any inspection and work done by the city inspector would have to be considered unenforceable and invalid. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tim McKenzie.
Hi, all. Thank you for the presentation. A bit wonky, but it is really important to be having thoughtful moving forward to deal with our energy and climate change infrastructure. So, I mean, it may be expensive for individuals to have to install things as things move forward, but the cost of not doing anything is going to make my generation and the younger generations really have difficult lives if just the climate change is already really impacting us a lot. So being proactive and taking steps is something I really like to see. And I'd also like to sort of float this idea out there of municipalization of our energy infrastructure. If I'm not mistaken, I think Palo Alto maybe has done that, but I personally don't like the idea of giving a bunch of money to PGE, who is a for-profit company who then uses that to pay large bonuses while not actually dealing with their infrastructure in a way that can provide us a reliable source of power. So I think it'd be great if we had some sort of municipalization of our power energy, so that we're not giving a for-profit company a bunch of money to not actually provide us reliable power. Think of how many blackouts we've had over the past few years. So just also want to float that, and thank you for looking into and thinking through this really wonky, deep policy stuff.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Bruce Nagel.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank the councils for the ability to speak at this. I've been a resident of Mountain View over 40 years, and climate change is important to me. We heard earlier from Pat about working on flood control. We also need to make sure that our children and grandchildren have a place to live. In fact, I know that in addition to the last speaker, the council member, was somebody on the council, and possibly multiple of them have had their children come to them and wonder, will I have a place to live? So we all realize this is important. Most of the code I really like. I would like to suggest an improvement at some point, which has been proposed in a bill that didn't quite get out of the finish line. And what it is to make sure that all the charging circuits for EV charging are level 2 low power as a minimum. What this does is a couple of things. First off, one is it limits the amount of current that gets put into the system to address load on the grid. It makes it easy because everything is equitable, and it provides a bit more juice than level 1, so that more people will be able to use it, because oftentimes low-income people are the ones who have to drive the largest distance. So I'm looking to the good things happening with the work that you've done on this, and I would like to see that, and making sure that we do address more of the existing buildings in the time to come, because obviously that's where most of it is. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Bruce. The next speaker is Chris Frank.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name's Chris Frank, and I'm a volunteer representing Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. Mountain View's REACH code helped lead the way for all-electric REACH codes the last cycle, and we're happy to see this strong all-electric code come up for readoption this cycle. Sierra Club strongly supports the adoption of the REACH code tonight, and we look forward to continuing to support equitable and aggressive action to transition Mountain View away from fossil gas pipeline infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Bruce Carney.
Thank you very much, Council, for the opportunity to speak briefly to you about this item. I know that Mountain View has been a leader for years in using local policy to fight climate change, and I applaud that and look forward to the continuation of that through the adoption of this particular item. I've often spoken in a variety of ways to you about climate change, but tonight I'd like to speak on behalf of my 2-day-old great-nephew, Bodhi. Bodhi will not be speaking to anyone for about a year until he learns how to talk, but he will be 77 years old in the year 2100, a year that I certainly don't expect to see, and even the youngest council members may be fortunate to see themselves. The climate in 2100 is likely to be far less helpful to human health and happiness than the climate we enjoy today. And so if Bodhi could speak to you, I'm sure he would advocate for the adoption of not only this ordinance, but for all sorts of advanced decarbonization ordinances that might come before the council during his lifetime. So on behalf of all the very young people of Mountain View and the United States and the world, please adopt the ordinance in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Rebecca Young.
Thank you. I have lived here in Mountain View for over 20 years and have 2 children at Mountain View High School. I am in support of taking bold climate action and support these strong reach codes. And I also wanted to comment on the cost concerns. Of course, we need to understand the financial costs and do everything possible to help residents, especially those with financial need, make the changes they'll need to make, both now and in the future as we address existing buildings. But I also want to make sure we all understand that we're now at a point where we're truly running out of time to address the climate crisis for future generations. And the cost of not rapidly transitioning to clean energy and away from gas in buildings is a cost that none of us want to bear. As previous speakers have noted, I really don't want us to be condemning my children and all of our children and grandchildren to a future we don't want to think about. So I want to thank the council for all of our previous bold action on climate and support a vote on these reach codes. I support these codes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Being no other members of the public wishing to speak, we will return to the council for deliberation and action, and I'll note that a motion to approve the recommendations should also include reading the title of the ordinances attached to the report. Councilmember Abikoga.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank staff and the Silicon Valley Clean Energy staff for all of your hard work on this upgrade. I know we do this every 3 years, and we took big strides in 2019 when this council voted to go all electric for new buildings, and I believe we were the first city to do so in our county, and a handful, and one of a handful in the area, if not the country at that time. I'm pleased to see that other cities have taken similar actions, and I'm pleased to see here that we are reaffirming our commitment to decarbonization and continuing to move forward with electrification. As it's mentioned by many members of the public, I look at this as trying to ensure a future for our next generations. And as I've mentioned this before, but as the mother of 2 Gen Z Zers, they remind me pretty much every day how important this is, because they do think about whether they're going to have a future or not. And I remember saying this before in 2019, the similar comment, and got some negative emails saying, well, you need to, be a better mom and talk to your kids about, what's really realistic and this and that. And so Unfortunately, not everybody thinks the way we do, but it's good to hear more members of the public coming forward and speaking out and being supportive of what we're trying to do. And I do believe that this is our effort to ensure a future for the next generations, as well as for us to be able to continue to enjoy our lives too. With that, again, I just want to offer my thanks to staff for their hard work. And now there's a lot of hands, but would be happy to make a motion if when the time is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Showalter.
Well, I guess Margaret beat me to the task of making the motion. She's going to get to make the motion, but I just want to say, as the only civil engineer who serves on the council, how incredibly important getting things in the building code is. Because when they're in the building code, they're just the rules. And when you hand out the rules to all the developers and all the contractors, that's what they understand needs to be done. It's setting these requirements is just incredibly powerful. And so I'm really proud of us for doing this. It's just so much more meaningful than making a resolution or setting a policy. Putting this in the building code is just very, very powerful. And I'm really, so I can't really say that enough. And again, I also would like to thank not only the staff, but I'd like to go back and thank our sustainability task force. We've had 2 rounds of it over the, I guess, decades now. And each time they've come forward with some very well thought out and valuable suggestions. And I'm pretty sure this one was right out of the last group that we got. And so so I'd like to thank them as well as the staff, and also the hard work of Carbon Free Mountain View and Carbon Free Silicon Valley that has spread the word and advocated to so many of our neighboring communities about this. I mean, this has really been a big effort on many people's part. And I just want to thank everybody who was involved and the contribution they made. And I'd be glad to second the motion after Margaret makes it the next time.
Thank you. Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I also want to echo my thanks for all the effort that has gone into this on the part of staff, as well as the community. As was mentioned by several of the speakers, this is probably the most important thing that we'll do, because we are at such a critical juncture in terms of quality of life and existence of humans on the planet. I want to go back to the comments that were made by the Vice Mayor, or questions that came from the Vice Mayor in the beginning. And I am very interested in the issue of gas lines that go to outdoor fireplaces and the like. And I just see us as past the point where gas burning for entertainment is a good idea. And so if that can come back to us at some point, I would really like to see that. I think it's a very worthwhile thing, and there are other alternatives to burning gas that are out there. And some very attractive electric fireplaces that are perfect for the outdoors. So I'm very interested in that issue as well. And I appreciate all the changes that our city staff has made in our own practices in terms of using electric leaf blowers in our parks. and every other initiative that they've undertaken. And the plans that we have for our city buildings and the changes to our city buildings that have already been realized. I'm proud that Mountain View can be on the forefront, as we've heard, and help to push this along. It's really legacy work when you look at it, and it goes very much hand in hand with preventing sea level rise and bay level rise, because we can try to cope and react to climate destruction, but anything that we can do to roll back the level of sheer climate destruction, I think is going to be good for our future. So I appreciate everything that's been put into this plan, and let's keep it going.
Thank you. Councilmember Matichak.
Thanks. So last time this came before us, I was supportive of the codes, and I believe at that meeting we even made amendments that were even stricter at the time. And I'm certainly supportive of continuing those, which it's too bad we have to adopt these every 3 years. But I am supportive of those, and I am okay with the additions to what I would consider the REACH codes. The parts I wanted to tweak, actually, I learned tonight we can't tweak. And I didn't have, major changes to them, but I did want to tweak some of them. But since we can't do that, I guess I'm concluding that I'm supportive of everything. So I don't have much more to say other than that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Kamei.
Great, thanks, Mayor. So I will be supportive of the motion when Councilmember Abikuka makes it. The things that I wanted to highlight were, echoing our thanks to our community and our sustainability task force too. I also want to thank all of you, our colleagues. I mean, we discussed how we were going to fund these projects and these initiatives, and now we have Danielle and her entire team, and we have, I think, 7 individuals in our city who are focused and working on it in the Office of Sustainability, as well as, cross-departmentally. And so I hope that this is also, something we can celebrate and thank all of you and thank the community, but also thank staff for putting this forward. I think it's a great testament and quite a bit of progress in the last few years. And in that vein, I would just ask staff to continue to do outreach and share what the city is doing and the different options available. I did meet with Silicon Valley Clean Energy a few weeks ago and said, you're doing so much. How do we do a better job about letting residents know what we're doing, the partnership opportunities? I think that that's something we can continue to work on. And I would ask that for these quasi-governmental agencies that we're members of, where we have memberships of which I'm not on, but I know some of you are. I love that we get that information during item 8, but also hopefully we can get that to residents, because I think there's a lot of different educational components that can happen, and that it's not as cumbersome as we might think that it is. So that's just what I'd like to share, and just want to say thanks again. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hicks.
Well, I will, of course, be supporting the motion. And just a couple of comments. First, I'd like to agree with what Councilmember Kamei just said in terms of education. I think that some of the things that we may not be requiring right now, it would be good to be giving people education. I know a number of friends and neighbors who've either put in gas fireplaces or switched out their old stove for a new gas stove. Really wish they'd known a little more about the climate impacts, and they would have made a different choice. So sometimes it's not, it's not more expensive. It's just that people don't have that information. And then hopefully at some point we can, as Councilmember Lieber said when she agreed with me, hopefully at some point we can require alternatives to outdoor gas barbecues and heaters and so forth. As the landscaper who emailed us all said, she's troubled by people continually installing those when she knows they're going to be phased out. So with that, I guess I'll just say this, I hope people understand the inspiring nature of what we're doing tonight. I think that sometimes we get bogged down in, as people have said, the wonkiness of it. But I was most inspired maybe by Bruce Nagel, who I think is still in the one of the members of the public with us tonight, sent us an article from the Sierra Club that said, phasing out gas appliances in the Bay Area would deliver a more significant reduction in nitrous oxide pollution than eliminating all the region's gasoline passenger cars. So, you know, we're not doing all that tonight, but we're on our way, and it's a significant step, and we don't often get good news these days. So I hope that we create some good news tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Abikoga.
Mayor, did you want to say anything first?
I was intending to use the privilege as mayor to speak right after the motion is made.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I actually did want to follow up on the outdoor gas lines. And is that something that we will have to wait 3 years for the next triennial code update to do? Or is there a way of doing it sooner than that?
Councilmember, I actually wanted to follow up with staff on whether people actually submit building permits for outdoor gas lines, because many times they're included as landscaping and we don't usually see building permits. So we want to make sure whatever our codes say can capture a lot of that. So I think we do definitely want to connect with SVCE to see what their recommendations might be for existing buildings and things of that nature. And then, you know, we can certainly come back in conjunction with the sustainability department in division on any other updates, you know, which before the 3 years.
So we can do something sooner than in 3 years. Okay, great. And then I just wanted to correct myself. In addition to the Bay Area Air District, actually, I just pulled something up that said the California Air Resources Board recently voted to ban the sale of new gas water heaters and furnaces beginning in 2030. So it is state requirement. So then with that, if it's all right, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to one, introduce an ordinance of the City of Mountain View amending Chapter 8, Articles 1 through 14 of the Mountain View City Code relating to the adoption of the 2022 California Building Codes, incorporating by reference other international and uniform codes, and adoption of the 2021 International Property Maintenance Code and 1997 Uniform Code for the abatement of dangerous buildings, to be read in title only, further reading waived, and set a second reading for December 13, 2022. Two, introduce an ordinance of the City of Mountain View amending Chapter 14, Articles 1 and 2 of the Mountain View City Code relating to the adoption of the 2021 International Fire Code, incorporating by reference amendments adopted by the State of California to establish the 2022 California Fire Code, to be read in title only, further reading waived, and set a second reading for December 13th, 2022. And three, introduce an ordinance of the City of Mountain View amending Chapter 24 of the Mountain View City Code relating to hazardous materials, to be read in title only, further reading waived, and set a second reading for December 13th, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Showalter.
It's my privilege to second that.
Thank you. Any remaining questions or comments? If not, I will simply say good and necessary, and I'm glad we're doing it. But as a couple of others have pointed out, insufficient if we're going to avert a climate catastrophe. So I hope that this is the start of a lot of additional good work and not the conclusion of the good work that we're doing. And with that, are there, I've already asked for questions and comments. City Clerk, would you mind starting the roll call vote?
Councilmember Abe Koga.
Aye.
Councilmember Showalter.
Yes.
Councilmember Kamei.
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber.
Yes.
Councilmember Matachek.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hicks.
Yes.
Mayor Ramirez.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks to the members of the community who spoke and to the staff who have worked on this item. And now we will proceed to council staff committee reports. Are there any? Councilmember Abe Koga.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few. Actually, would continue with continuing on the discussion we just had. I had a report from Clean Energy. It's actually pretty long, so if I'd like to go ahead, I can go ahead and ask staff to send it, to distribute it to you all, because there's some good information in there. And then I also attended the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority meeting we meet monthly now. One of the items that was discussed there was, or we received an update of the housing element process. And you may be aware of the status, and I can send this out, that we received a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation on it, and I can send this out, but just, quick overview. Out of the entire state, statewide, 29% of housing elements have been certified, and I'll say only 29%. And that includes Southern California. There's actually quite a bit of backlog down in Southern California, and their housing elements were due a year ago in October of 2021. In our Bay Area, 52 drafts have been submitted to HCD, and 6 comment letters were received, including us. Actually, it's probably more than that. This was from 2 weeks ago, I believe. And 1 jurisdiction, the city of Alameda, is the only one that's been approved. So as we saw, we received comments. It looks like that the similar comments are being received by most of all other cities that have submitted. And so there's still quite a work to be done. The BAFA is offering technical assistance. And also, I guess someone pointed out that with the Southern California experience, I guess the good news is that no city has been fined as of yet. There hasn't been any repercussions so far, it seems like, for being late or not having their housing elements adopted. And my perspective on that is maybe partially because HCD looks like they're behind in reviewing everything too. So just thought I would share that with all of you, and I'm happy to send the presentation to all of you as well. And I attended MTC. We've been having a lot of discussion on trying to provide a priorities list regionally of our transportation projects that we would like to get funded on. Occasionally, especially right now, we're being asked by the federal government and the state government what our priorities are. So we've been working to try to come up with a priority list. I'm happy to say that, as mentioned, as we voted on earlier, Rengsdorf grade separation, both Rengsdorf and Castro grade separation projects still continue to be at the top of the list of grade separation projects. So as you've received staff email earlier about grant applications that have been applied for, the VTA has been actually very instrumental in helping us to look for grant opportunities to apply for and helping us apply for them. So I appreciate that support. I've also been appointed, I think I mentioned this, I was appointed by the VTA board chair to an ad hoc committee on grade separations, and we just met last week. It's comprised of a representative from Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, and then myself. I was selected as chair of this committee, and our plan is to meet regularly. It was really helpful. We had an update from all the cities in the three cities as to where our grade separation projects are. So I've been concerned that at the regional level, I've been seeing kind of cities being pitted against each other for funding opportunities and whatnot. And so this seems to be an attempt for us, at least for Santa Clara County, to work together and try to align ourselves and even create a timeline as to when we can expect to see, grant money, funding opportunities, and try to avoid competing against each other so that we can actually get all of our projects done. So that's the goal for this committee, and we will be meeting, I think, at least once every 2 months is the plan. And then finally, we just talked about electrification. I attended the Cal Cities luncheon on clean energy, and we had presentations from both our Silicon Valley Clean Energy CEO as well as Peninsula Clean Energy, and lots of good discussion about what cities and what our CCAs are doing, and beginning to talk about what we can do with existing buildings. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think fortunately with grade separations, we are years ahead of our neighboring cities, so I'm not too worried about competition. Councilmember Kamei.
Great, thank you. So last Wednesday we had our CHAC board meeting, which we're a JPA, and just wanted to make people aware, if they are not, Marcia Desailliers, who's been the executive director of CHAC the last 6 years, is retiring. And so there will be an open recruitment for the executive director, and we'll be working on having an interim. So just wanted people to know about that change. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to talk about a couple of issues. One was that the recent San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority, there was a very good presentation from staff from BCDC, where Councilmember Showalter serves on the board, talking about the Bay Adapt plan and the need to get more cities signed on to Bay Adapt. And so I'm very glad that Mountain View has been signed on since January or February timeframe of this year. But there's a real opportunity for other cities to get on board. So I'll send a link to the city clerk to disseminate to us and any council members that we're working with from other cities, if we can share it with them and ask that they consider it. It's something that I think we need a real Bay Area-wide push on. And the Restoration Authority is definitely a partner in that effort. So it's a multi-agency Bay Area-wide concern. The second thing that I wanted to bring up to talk a little bit about is something that I mentioned at our last meeting, which is the soft story buildings. And the concern that we have over 5,000 units of housing in Mountain View that are soft story construction. And we actually have a much larger percentage than most other cities of the timber frame wood construction soft story. And so I'm hopeful that we can work out a way to approach this before our next major earthquake. And I think there's actually sort of a lot of different approaches, from requiring that landlords inform prospective tenants and current tenants about the status of their building, to actually developing the information. There's even the possibility of perhaps looking at an ordinance that would prohibit landlords in soft story buildings from banning tenants from anchoring large furniture to their walls. But I think really the key is to make sure that the individuals who are living in over 5,148 or something like that at last count, that they really know about their situation so that they can make their own choices. I think we've all seen in Mountain View, with the tightness of our housing market, that people will go for just about any housing that they can find at a price point that's affordable for them. But the city is really the entity that can require that information be out there for individuals so that they can make choices about maybe not locating large pieces of furniture over a baby's crib, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that really allowing people that must live in those kinds of situations to be able to anchor their furniture is the ethical thing to do. So if there are ideas among the council members, I'd be very willing to hear them. And if there are ideas in the community, I'd be especially interested in hearing those as well. And I'm hopeful that it's something that we can tackle in the next year. As we've talked about before, there was recently an earthquake fault that hadn't been identified before that runs along Foothill Expressway and is projected to have pose a real risk for our community. And I think as we look at the difficulty of getting new housing, we don't have a plan for what we would do if we were short 5,000 units. We could not respond on an emergency basis to that level of collapse in buildings. And it's not something that we think about with all of our pressing issues every single day, but I think it's something that we have a real ethical duty to explore on behalf of our constituents. So more discussion to come on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any other reports or questions? If not, then we'll move to item 8, closed session report. City Attorney Logue, do you have a closed session report?
Thank you. Good evening. This is Jennifer Logue, City Attorney. No, there is no closed session report this evening.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. The next City Council meeting will be held on November 15, 2022. Until then, stay healthy, and the meeting is adjourned at 8:37 p.m. Thank you, everyone.